Great to be here in Helsinki. Thank you guys for having me. Interesting to see how the front row is just completely, I don't know if that's a cultural thing or what, and there's people standing in the back, so you guys can come on up here. It's not there's no extra charges for sitting in the front. It's the same price everywhere. So I'm Max Furmanov. I've been with Accenture for 17 years now, and one of my jobs at Accenture is running our Liquid Studios globally, which is where we deliver innovation for clients. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today, what it takes to deliver innovation, and what innovation is, and what's happening, what we're seeing in this space. Now, Tomas in his earlier keynote, thank you, Matt, very good, front row. Tomas talked about the intelligent enterprise and how that's going to be, what's happening in the next 5 years and what we're going to see and what we're going to talk about. Innovation is, I believe, how we get there, how companies, how businesses are going to get there. And businesses that won't innovate or can't innovate, they will not survive and they will not become an intelligent enterprise. So to me, innovation is the path by which we get to the intelligent enterprise that's not here today, right? Because you can't go to Amazon.com and say, I'd like to buy an intelligent enterprise, put it in your shopping cart and pay for it, right? You have to innovate and get there, and that's what I think innovation is going to help us do. So innovation is really, really important. But innovation is a broad term, right? How do we actually innovate? What does it mean to innovate? What are the underlying principles that help businesses, create new services, new ideas, new models, right? New exciting technologies, right? How do they adopt that to what they're actually doing every day? That's what I want to talk about. And I think one of the things that's really important to talk about when we talk about innovation is to recognize the speed at which technology is changing. Tomas talked a little bit about this, but I want to spend a few more minutes on it because I think the speed at which technology is changing is actually forcing the need for innovation and is what's going to get us to that intelligent enterprise very quickly. We're actually in the process of moving. So the other week I was packing some of the stuff we had, and my 10-year-old son was helping me, and we found a pager. You guys remember pagers? Remember beepers, right? So he looks at it, he's 10 years old, and he says, "What is this?" And I said to him, "Well, it's this really cool thing. What we used to do is if you want to contact someone, you'd send a message to this thing. It would buzz, right, with the name of the person or the number of the person that's contacting you. You'd go find a payphone, put 25 cents in, and you'd call them back." And he says, "Okay, I get that. I understand how that would work, but why couldn't you just use your mobile phone, right?" I was like, I don't think you get the point. So the point is, right, that technology has changed so quickly, right? Kids being born today, they're born into a different world. And I think that we are just reaching kind of the pivot point where technology is going to accelerate even faster. And I want to tell you a quick story. How many of you guys have heard the story about the second half of the chessboard? Anyone heard this story? Okay, probably from me. Okay, so the story is a legend about how chess was introduced to India. And the legend goes something like this. The inventor of chess comes to India and shows the emperor this game. And the emperor is so impressed with the game of chess that he says to the inventor, "You can have any reward you like." Now, the inventor wants to appear a humble man, and so he says, "All I want is some rice. Give me 1 grain of rice for the first square of the chessboard, and then double the amount of rice for every next square." So the emperor says, okay, starts giving him rice, gives him 1 grain of rice on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, 8 on the fourth, so on and so forth. You guys know how exponential numbers work. By the time they get through half the chessboard, the emperor needs more rice than India can produce in a year. Okay? Now, he quickly realizes that he's been duped, by this inventor, cuts off his head. There's an economist at MIT called Andrew McAfee. You can look him up. He calls this the second half of the chessboard problem. Not the chopping off of the head, but the fact that when you get through half the chessboard in exponential numbers, they start to multiply so quick that our mind can't even comprehend how big those numbers get. Okay? And he applies this to Moore's law, and he says, if you realized that businesses started using technology, started applying IT to their back-end business processes in, let's say, 1960, we will have entered the second half of the chessboard around 2010. So what we're seeing today is we're entering that second half of the chessboard. And so these technologies like artificial intelligence, some of these technologies that Tomas talked about, you can see the waves of these new technologies really converging, right? And really becoming much, much more quickly. Artificial intelligence, connected technologies, right? All of these things are becoming to converge and becoming and accelerating much, much faster. What is that doing, right? Well, it's creating a tremendous amount of disruption. And what businesses tomorrow need to think about is not the traditional competition that you may have been thinking about yesterday, but the competition that you will have tomorrow that is sitting in someone's garage today. Your next competitor is not, the large company that's got an office across the street from you. It is these guys. It is companies like this that are born in a garage, right? If you think about these companies, the Ubers of the world, the Airbnbs of the world, they are companies that are not born of the industry they are in. Uber is actually the largest taxi company in the world, but it's really not a taxi company, right? They're a technology platform. Airbnb rents out more rooms today than Starwood and Marriott, who recently combined, right? They rent out more rooms than that entire chain across the world every day, okay? So it's creating tremendous amount of disruption. One of the reasons that's happening is because the entry barriers to your business have been eliminated. Cloud, crowdsourcing, open APIs and services, technology services that are available out there that you can consume, are making businesses, start up overnight, right? If you think about some of these companies, WhatsApp supports 1 billion users with less than 60 engineers. Instagram, right, was sold for over $1 billion. 200 million users with 5 engineers. These are companies that are leveraging technologies like cloud, technologies like crowdsourcing, or processes like crowdsourcing, and technologies to disrupt businesses overnight, right? Think about what's going to happen tomorrow when artificial intelligence is going to become more mature, when connected technologies are going to become more standardized, how that will drive, disruption. And the other thing that this is doing is, what I said earlier about pagers, it's actually changing people's expectations. Kids that are born in the world today, they will not see a tube television, right? They won't know what that is. The technologies that they interact with are so vastly different than technologies that were around just 10 years ago that their expectations are different. And our expectations as employees, as citizens, as participants in society are changing very quickly every day. I spent 2 years at Walt Disney World building the Magic Band program for them. Many of you guys have heard about Disney's Magic Band. So Magic Band is this connected band that Disney launched last year, or now 2 years ago, that transforms how you experience the park, right, as a guest. And I think it's a great example to illustrate how once you change someone's expectations and give them something cool, how it actually changes what you expect everywhere else. And I want to show you guys a quick video to illustrate that, which is a marketing video that Disney used to actually market the Magic Band, okay? So let's take a look.
Hi, I'll take a large coffee and leave room, please.
That's $3.26. $3.26.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry,
Oh. There you go.
Next. Hi. Hi, can I help you?
Oh, yes, 2, please. Oh, There you go.
Oh, I don't, what is that?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once you've experienced My Magic Plus at Walt Disney World Resort, you'll want to use it everywhere.
This is going to be awesome.
So the one thing they get wrong is, right, they say once you've experienced this, you'll want to use it everywhere. It's actually not that you'll want to. You expect that all of your experiences like this are seamless, right, are exactly what you saw there, right? So it's changing. So innovation is changing what we expect from technology, what we expect when we come to work, what we expect from technologies we have in our house. So innovation is fundamentally transforming businesses all across the board, and it's actually transforming businesses in vast ways, right? From an efficiency standpoint, businesses are changing how efficient their processes are using innovative technologies. So, one example is there's a company based in Singapore that grows trees to make paper, printing paper. I think they produce something like half the world's printing paper. And Accenture's actually helped them take drones, monitor their fields where they grow trees, and assess the density of those trees to use as input into where they plant seeds next season, and also look at the color of the leaves of those trees to know where to irrigate or where to use less water, right? And that has dramatically improved their crop yields, right? So that's about efficiency. Innovative technology is also changing businesses and creating new channels for businesses to interact with customers. You guys ever had Blockbuster in Finland? You guys know what Blockbuster is? Blockbuster is a very large, chain in the U.S., or used to be, that rented out videos. You used to go there, get a DVD or a VHS tape to watch a movie, right? Well, they of course are no longer in business, right? Who took them over? Netflix. They actually had an opportunity to buy Netflix for a few $1 million, and they thought, nah, that's never gonna materialize, right? We'll skip that. So technology has created new channels for businesses to go to market with, right, and reach their consumers. It's also created brand new business models, right? How you do your business today. There's a comedy theater in Barcelona. Have you guys heard about this? And this comedy theater in Barcelona, normal comedy theater, you pay 20 euros or whatever, you go watch a show, right? This comedy theater in Barcelona, you don't pay a penny. You go in and watch a show, and at the end of the show, you get a bill. And on the bill, it says how many beers you had, how many sandwiches you had, and how many laughs you had. And they will charge you 30 euro cents for every laugh. I kid you not. They use facial recognition technology. They record everyone in the audience, right? And they look at how many times you're laughing. So if you've left and you didn't have a good time, you're not going to pay very much, right? Maybe just pay for the beer. So new business models are emerging using innovative technologies. New businesses altogether. You guys heard of a little company called Amazon, right? You know what Amazon was when they started? They were a bookshop, right? And when they started scaling, they realized that they needed technology to support their business, right? So they built something they now sell as AWS. And that became a huge new business for them. And finally, platforms, right? Businesses are becoming platforms. Actually, Gartner had a very good quote that I really liked. They said, by 2020, if you're a large company, you will have either created an innovative ecosystem and platform, or you will be part of someone else's. Or I guess the third option is you'll be out of business, right? But the point is that technology is enabling creation of ecosystem, creation of platforms that allows collaboration and attracts other businesses to those platforms, to those ecosystems, so they can create new innovative services. Think about companies like Uber and Airbnb. These are purely platform companies, right? Amazon launched, yet another platform that Amazon launched is Alexa. 3 million people in the world today use Alexa. 3 million people. Alexa has become a platform which other services are attracted to, and you can now, leverage. We did a project actually for Airbnb out in California, where we use Alexa to create a virtual host. When you rent an Airbnb room, you go to you go to that house, you stay in that room. It's probably a city that is not familiar to you, and Alexa can act as a virtual host in that environment, providing you services that others are attracted to, right? Maybe Uber services, maybe finding out what restaurants are in the area, things like that. So innovative technologies and innovation is fundamentally transforming businesses and creating disruption. So how do we deliver innovation? How do businesses deliver innovation? What are the core ingredients? What do you need to be thinking about when you deliver innovation? Well, the first thing to realize is that innovation is about speed. It's about doing things very rapidly, right? If you've got a project going on, I think Tomas had a really nice chart before, that 5-year project that you launch to fix stuff, right? By the time you get to the end of the project, you realize that the stuff you were trying to fix is no longer relevant, right? Or the stuff that you've built no longer is what the business needs. So things have to happen very, very quickly. And innovation tends to work better when you can realize, see, touch, and feel things very quickly. We had a project, one of my favorite projects in the Liquid Studio we have out in California, we did for Wyndham, right? Wyndham, of course, is a very large, resorts and hotels business. And they came in to do a session with us, an innovation session in California. Part of the session was brainstorming about what some of their challenges were. One of the challenges they brought up to us, their executive team brought up, was their loyalty program and how they have a challenge creating a consistent experience for some of their more loyal guests, right? Basic things like, offering someone an amenity, a free water or a free candy bar when they arrive at the hotel because they're of a certain level in your program, they're not able to consistently do. The hotels are managed independently, very often by sole proprietors on a shoestring budget, so they had a hard time doing that. One of the ideas we came up with together, in that 1-hour session is, imagine we had a vending machine that would recognize the person as they walked in because they're logged in on their app, right? And the level of their level in the loyalty program. So you recognize that individual, and the vending machine automatically offers them an amenity, right? They thought it was a great idea, and then they went to have lunch. While they were at lunch, our Liquid Studio team actually prototyped this out. So when they came back, they were recognized and they were offered an amenity, and they were impressed by the fact that we can do it quickly. But what happened afterwards was even more interesting because suddenly they started having all these ideas. They said, well, what if we let them check in on the machine? Or what if we let them order room service or check out or do this or do that? And then they said, well, we don't like how this works. Can we tweak it a little bit, right? So this back and forth really nurtures innovation. This ability to quickly build things, quickly realize things, really helps you innovate. And today's technology is conducive to doing that. We have things like DevOps. We have things like more liquid architectures and services you can assemble, right? That allow you to really experiment and build things very quickly. So that's a key part of understanding how innovation gets delivered. But as Tomas said earlier, right, at Accenture we talk about everything in threes. So I'm going to tell you my 3 things that help accelerate innovation, which I think are the foundational elements of how you bring innovation into an organization, okay? First and foremost, it's about architecture, both how your technology systems are architected, and how your entire enterprise is architected. And we call the liquid architecture. The second part is about delivery methods, processes, and tools you use to drive technology implementation. These are the things that need to fundamentally change for us to be able to innovate more quickly. And thirdly, people. Not that we need to change all the people out, but the way we operationalize teams needs to change. Okay, and I'll talk about each of these things. So first of all, architecture. This is probably stuff that you guys have heard in all the sessions, throughout today, right? Architectures are becoming more liquid, more compartmentalized, more standardized, more seamless. They use open platforms. They use obviously cloud as its infrastructure, so you can quickly stand things up, right? These are all new modern technology principles that achieve 2 things. One is speed. You can stand things up faster. You can build applications faster. You can integrate applications faster. And the second thing is it actually facilitates, the ecosystem that I talked about earlier. Whether it's an ecosystem within your organization or an ecosystem of your partners, these technologies, these liquid architectures, enable that to happen at a technology level, at a technical level, the integration of data, the integration of services, right? So how we think about architecture needs to fundamentally change. The second thing is the software delivery lifecycle needs to change. The tools we use, the processes we use, right? The modern software delivery lifecycle is continuous, it's iterative, and you should be able to move back and forth within that software delivery lifecycle, and you should be able to do it very, very quickly. You need to apply things like design thinking and DevOps to facilitate the design and implementation phases and tools associated with that. You need to use lean and agile to get the quality out of development that you need. It's when all these things come together and the tooling and processes around that you can achieve speed. So this is the second element. And the third element, I think, is often the most difficult to adopt. And it's the operating model. How do you operationalize your teams? So all you guys work for organizations that have technology, I'm assuming, in them. So how many of you, can identify which of these pillars, or maybe there's some others, these vertical pillars you are part of? Right? Everybody know whether they're in engineering or they're in part of the business or they're in operations, right? Maybe your role spans some of these. Organizations today, businesses today, are organized around these blue lines, these blue verticals. You can probably identify who in your organization is responsible for infrastructure, right across the board, right? But the interesting thing is that value doesn't get delivered across the blue lines. Value to your customers gets delivered across those in the products and services that you build and deliver for your customers. That's where the value is, okay? But most organizations aren't organized around those value streams. They're organized around the verticals. Those verticals are not end-to-end. When your customer experiences a product, they're not experiencing just one of those verticals. They're experiencing a product or service across all of that. And that's a challenge today. If you look at Uber, you look at Airbnb, they don't have an engineering team and a testing team. They have product teams, and their product teams are aligned to the functions of the service they provide, and they're end-to-end. This is really important. These models today that are vertical, they drive accountability, they drive funding, and fundamentally, those things are not aligned to the products and services that your customers are experiencing. And this is a fundamental thing that needs to change. One of the things we do in the Accenture Liquid Studios is all of our teams, while being focused on a very small part of someone's business, they're focused on an individual project, maybe an individual product or service. We organize those teams along the orange lines. We organize them horizontally, and we make those teams end-to-end. That team is accountable for taking an idea and making it into an experience. Across testing, across engineering, across operations. And that requires a different operating model. It also requires a different culture. How many of you guys have heard about Etsy? You know what Etsy is? Right? Everybody shop on Etsy? Did they have Etsy in Finland? Can you buy stuff on Etsy here? You can? Okay. So Etsy is actually, their headquarters, actually, I think their only main office is located 3 miles from my house in Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn, New York, right? And they're about 3 miles from me. Etsy has a very interesting rule. When they hire engineers, whoever they hire, on their first day on the job, they need to deploy code into production. Now, I've been at Accenture for 17 years. I've probably been at several dozen of our clients. I can't, get into the network on the first day on the job. I sometimes can't get into the building on the first day on the job, right? Never mind deploying code to production. But I think this talks about the culture that they're trying to infuse. And it's part of this operating model. It's part of the different shift in how technology gets delivered that I think is really, really important. And that example underlines that. So those are the 3 elements that I think are really key to driving innovation through an organization. It's changing how your technology is architected. It's changing the methodology, the process, and the tools of how you deliver technology. And it's changing the operating model of how your people are organized, the culture you want to infuse, right? The kinds of things that Etsy is doing. So every organization is going to have different means of delivering innovation. They're going to have different capabilities. And I think these are 3 really, really important factors to really create the foundation for driving innovation. And at Accenture, the way we then drive innovation using these three foundational blocks is this innovation architecture that I'll talk to you about for a second. Your innovation architecture, every business's innovation architecture, is going to look different, right? The capabilities you have to actually create innovative ideas is going to be different. But it's going to have, I think, similar elements to what you see up here. There is thought leadership, right, that drives research in the areas that your business is in. It is our liquid studios that drive the actual delivery of technology using the three core principles that I've talked about. And it's figuring out how to scale that, whether you're scaling it in a business sense, or you're scaling it from a technology sense, or you're scaling it in terms of number of people you use. We do that in our delivery centers. So this is Accenture's innovation architecture that brings together all the capabilities we have to help our clients deliver innovation. But again, I think it's those three fundamental core blocks that everyone needs to adopt in order to be able to effectively deliver innovation and take new ideas, create new services, new businesses, become a platform business, right? Rely on the ecosystem around you and be successful in the future. That's all I had. Hopefully that gives you guys a sense of how we look at innovation, how we help our clients deliver innovation, and some of the capabilities that Accenture pulled together, to help our clients do that. Thank you very much. Sorry? Oh.
Does any one of you have some questions for Max? Good. Keep that in mind. No. Okay. What was the question?
I'll keep my question in mind. Thank you very much. No, okay, so you talk about the rapid development of certain businesses, and kind of you made examples. However, I think some of those businesses, they're based on certain legacy kind of technologies that was developed long time ago. As an example, Netflix. So it wouldn't launch if you wouldn't have very good broadband networks, right? Then kind of you mentioned some about the artificial intelligence. So what's your perception in that area? Kind of at what point this rapid acceleration happens, and how kind of to control that in attachment with the technology which requires a long development?
Yeah, actually the example you used, I think, is a great one, Netflix, right? So Netflix was able to be successful because of broadband networks. Now, when Netflix launched, I think one of the reasons Blockbuster didn't think that this could be a successful model, wasn't interested in acquiring them, thought it was a phase, was probably precisely because it was difficult to download high quality, right, video over broadband. It just wasn't there yet. But Netflix had that vision, and they developed their product while waiting for the underlying technology that was their platform to catch up with it, right? So it's those early visionaries that are going to be successful. And technologies like artificial intelligence, like IoT, like I said, we're in the second half of the chessboard, so they're going to evolve very, very quickly. And it's businesses today that can think about what happens, what they can do when that happens, that will be successful. So it has to be, you can't put the horse before the cart too far, but you have to be proactive to some extent in designing your business solutions and assuming how technology is going to catch up.
Any other questions? Good. Okay. I actually have one question for you.
Okay.
What's your dream? What do you want to invent?
What do I want to invent? That's a really good question. I would like for us to get to a point where when we build technology, we're not actually coding, we're not actually developing. We are assembling and reusing existing functionality that's out there. And building technology becomes like what I watch my kids do when they play with Lego Mindstorms, and they have these visual interfaces where they can create these really nifty, new, innovative ideas in a visual way without having the technology background that we needed, yesterday, right, and in years past to actually build this stuff out. And I think there's actually a really good example of where that's starting to come into play, at least in the consumer space. Have you guys heard of IFT, IFTTT? Anybody uses IFT? It's becoming more popular. IFT is a little startup out in California. They make an app for your phone. You can download it. It's called IFT, IFTTT. And what it does is it actually creates a platform for all the apps on your phone to interact with. And what you can do inside their app is you can create what they call recipes, which follow the if this, then that pattern, hence the name, IFTTT, if this, then that. So you can do things like, for example, I have a recipe on my phone that says, if my GPS app is telling you I'm near my house, then have the Philips app turn on my lights, right? So neither one of those apps were designed to do that. Neither one of those apps were designed to turn on my lights when I get to my house. But using IFT, you can create it in a very visual way. You can add that new use case. So my dream is that, very quickly, very soon, we're going to have the IFT for the enterprise.
Voisin sanoa ihan suoraan, että anteeksi ruman kielen, aika vitun siistiä. And you can Google that.
Turn on my Alexa and record that.
Thank you. Yeah, put that in the Alexa.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.